will do, I'm sure you all have your phones sitting handily by. So I'm going to have you all pick up your phone, and I'm sure you're on mute, but to ask Siri, what is leadership? What is leadership? And you're going to come up with, a picture of a man in a suit standing behind a podium. And you're going to be left with the following definition of leadership: the ability of an individual or organization to guide other individuals, teams, or entire organizations. For me, this is completely just such a lame and blah kind of definition for leadership. I hate the thought of young kids or anyone getting on and asking, the ever powerful Siri or Google to try to define leadership for them, because it's so much bigger and brighter and bolder and more colorful and more awesome than that could explain. And so I think in shaping leadership, stories are probably some of the best way to kind of deliver some of that. And so I think leadership is, and I think about the definition of leadership, and I think it's entirely messy and complicated. And the tough part for me that I've always struggled with is so contradictory. On the one hand, I can sit here and tell you like leadership is about being confident and assertive and uncompromising. And in the next sentence, I could be telling you leadership is about being, selfless and humble, and about being, really kind of soft and gentle in your approach. And none of those are wrong. And that's what's really tough for me. Leadership just seems so big, and it's so great, and it's so all encompassing, and it's in everything, and it's in every single one of you. And so through a couple of stories and through sports, I kind of want to share with you what I consider to be, my big five. And again, I'm no expert, and I'm not saying these are right or wrong. I'm just going to kind of use them to demonstrate to you some of the ways I've arrived at being the leader that I consider myself to be. Being a head coach, I do think I look at it like, I sometimes joke when I'm asked to fill out my occupation on a piece of paper and I write, full-time head coach. I sometimes think it would be more realistic for me, probably a little cocky for me, but to write full-time leader. But really, they're interdependent on each other for me. Being a coach means being a leader, and being a leader means being a coach. And that's kind of how I look at things. And so I'm going to share with you a couple of stories of my big five. And my big five are authenticity, choice, connection, action, and growth. And there are so many other things, and there are so many subtopics within each of these things. So without my head exploding and trying to do it justice and go through it, I'm going to share with you just a little bit about each and share some of my stories. So in terms of authenticity, it's a really important one for me, because I'm of the firm belief that leadership is personal. It's not positional. I don't think you need a title for it. You don't need to be a president. You don't need to be a captain. I don't need to be a coach. That's not, by definition, does not make me a leader, but it is personal. It's personal to each individual, and your kind of DNA and what makes you up as a leader, it is the most important thing for me in understanding that. And I think in order to really understand who you are and be true to those things and not try to be something else, I always say any team and any of my players can always sniff out if you're not being genuine, if you're not being authentic in how you go about things. And the way I kind of look at it is, you're not born with a part on your birth certificate that says, check here, I'm a leader. You don't get that, you're not fitting it into one box. You can't be everything. You can't be all encompassing. It's not one size fits all. I know I've bought those t-shirts at the bookstore that say one size fits all. There's no such thing. It actually doesn't work like that. There is no one size fits all. There is no mold that you need to fit. And I think the best leaders are the ones that are truly authentically themselves, in which case they don't need to try so hard at it. It can be their default. They're kind of press your default button, go back to it. It's always there, and it's what you can rely on yourself. I like to think about it kind of like my moral compass. And if I fall back on that all the time, then that is leading through being personal. I think early on in my career, and one of the best examples I can give you of this is I used to try to pick captains, and we used to pick them as a team. We used to put every word of what we wanted our captain to be up on a board. And then we would try to pick the person that had all of those traits and all of those bits and pieces. And we as a coaching staff would go through and pick that person. And over time, and being here for 13 years, it was probably about 8 years into being a coach here that we kind of decided to start looking at it like, what does the team need? What do we think the things are that the team need? And then who maybe has certain traits and who can lead authentically, being their genuine self that people can turn to and rely on, and can kind of model their behavior after, and find something in everyone. And so we've changed things, and we have, the lead by example. We've got Ellie Klugel on here, who, and call her out, but she's from our team, and Ellie leads by example in all that she does in the classroom, off the field, in the community, on the lacrosse field. If it's in a run, if it's in a lift, if it's in, doing the right thing, you can count on Ellie to be that person. We've got another player who is the vocal leader. She's out there. She is always talking. She's constantly being that kind of motivator and speaking to the team and having that positive, like, loud voice when you need it. We've got players that are knowledgeable. They have expertise that is above and beyond maybe some of the other players on the team, that when you're talking about needing to know a skill or having to understand a strategy or something on the field, they're there, the competitive kind of one as well. And then we've got players that they're fun, they're goofy, they're kind of lighthearted, they're the ones that bring, the energy, but also people can go to when they feel like things are too much and too stressful. And rather than asking each of our captains to have everything, asking them to focus on what they are genuinely comfortable and have as a strength that they can highlight and showcase on a daily basis, that adds more value, in my opinion, to our team than trying to find one person that has everything. And I think in being authentically themselves, again, they can go out there and they can just be themselves. And so there's that default. What I'm not saying here, and I think it's really important that I do put this out there, is I'm not saying not to borrow from different people, because I think imitation is a great form of flattery. And I also think, why reinvent the wheel? I think this all the time. I am a byproduct, and I think I am a compilation of the greatest hits of so many really great leaders that I've had in my life, and I've been able to pull from them. Whether it's a really great public speaker and figuring out, like, why did I love that? What was engaging about them and how they spoke, and then trying to incorporate that as best as it fits into my leadership style. Whether it's leading by example and seeing someone who they just did it better than I felt like other people did. And then within that, I will say, I have people that I've learned what not to do, how not to lead. I've had coaches when I played and coaches who I coached with who I was like, I don't want to be that person. And I think that's powerful as well, as learning lessons along the way for yourself as a leader, not just who you want to be, but who don't you want to be, and what things don't you want to do, and what things made you feel a certain way that you want to avoid kind of in your presentation of yourself as a leader as you go through. But I think at the end of the day, that moral compass, that ability to go back to it, it's going to be the hardest part of being a leader at times, because, the easy stuff and going with the flow, but sometimes going and defaulting back and saying, like, no, like, this is, I need to stay true to this part of who I am. It's the most important part of my moral compass. I need to lead in this way, I think is so important. And so, through titles, I do think you're sometimes given a platform to lead, but I also think you don't need that title to do it. I think there's no reason for anyone sitting here. You all have some special qualities in you that you would be doing a disservice to others to not be offering out and giving up on a daily basis, and feeling that you have the opportunity to do that. The next thing I'm going to talk about is choice. And, I think life is a matter of choices that you make on a daily basis. And those choices that you make end up making you. They end up making the person that you are, and I think make the leader that you are as well. And I always really think about, I belong to I coach a camp over the summer. It's a sports and leadership kind of academy. It's called the Julie Foudy Leadership Academy. And when we're there, we have a tagline, and the tagline is choose to matter. And I think it's an awesome tagline to just live by in life. Choose to matter. And it's a choice that you can always make, because ultimately it comes down to you. And I think choice is such a powerful part of leadership, because I do think it shapes how other people see you and perceive you, how they're going to follow you, as well as how you are leading your intentions, and how they're leading life. So in thinking about, I think, sports, and probably the best opportunity to kind of showcase choice in my life as an athlete or a coach, I'm going to default back to, I was a very fortunate athlete. I never really got injured. I kind of grazed through with just very minimal things, nothing that ever kept me off the lacrosse field. I was very, very fortunate in that way. I played many World Cups throughout my time, and I had approached what was going to be my kind of swan song, my final World Cup. I was a captain of a team that was set to play in Canada in the 2013 World Cup. And the way lacrosse World Cups work, they're every 4 years. So you finish a World Cup, and then about 3 years out, you start your training and you start to taper up and into it. So for 3 years, I'm so focused on this idea that I'm about to retire from the international game as an athlete. You know, I have an opportunity to captain my team to another gold medal, and that's the intention and the goal, you know, the big overarching goal that we have for ourselves. And, you know, I trained in a way, I was a woman on a mission. I trained in a way for those 3 years, harder than I've ever trained before, thinking this is it. And so 3 years in the making, and then our Australian team actually came to the US. They came to Baltimore to Maryland to train for the last week before we went over to Canada to play in the World Cup. And first practice out on the field, I'm running. I take a shot, a dodge and a shot that I've taken 20 billion times in my career. And I went down. I went down with the infamous pop knee injury. And I knew right in that moment what I'd done. And I was laying on the ground after a few, I will admit, choice words probably said, and rolling around. But I laid on the ground, and in that moment I said, I know what is about to happen here. And I know I'm about to not be able to play in this World Cup. I know I'm going to be out. And as I laid on the ground in that moment, I don't know what made me think it, but I said, this will not define you. You will not be defined by an ACL that keeps you out of a World Cup. So I sat through the rest of that practice, went and got an MRI. Sure enough, I've torn my ACL, and I made a commitment to myself in that moment. I won't focus on not being able to play. I won't focus on not being able to be on the field as a captain. I won't focus on not being able to put my jersey on. What I will focus on is what I can still do, not what I can't, but what I can. And that was a choice in that moment that I made as a leader. I said, I can still help this team somehow. And I was fortunate enough to be on the sideline. And I look at it as one of my crowning, probably greatest achievements in my life. I wasn't out on the field. I didn't physically play in order to help us earn a medal, but I still look at it as one of my greatest accomplishments, because I learned and taught myself to lead in a really different way. It had always been for me on a field with a stick in my hands. That had been natural, and that had been easy. And instead I had to look at it and say, how can you do it in a different way? How can you empower others? How can you be off the field, and how can you give them what they wanted? And it was really kind of an aha moment for me in leadership that I have carried into my coaching and into my life, and into the way in which I lead moving forward is trying to not focus on what I can't do, trying to focus on what I can do, and then trying to be as good as I can possibly be for those people in that moment in whatever capacity they need of me. And so I found myself throughout that World Cup constantly asking my teammates, what do you need? What can I do for you? How can I help lead you? What do you need from me today? I can't be on the field, but what else can I do? And for them, they would share with me, I need you to motivate me today. I need you to be positive. I'm not feeling it today. Can you be my energy? Can you be this or that? And I think sometimes that choice that you make is what defines you. I laugh about it because so many text messages came into me and messages to people saying everything happens for a reason. And I hate that quote. I hate it for anything. I say it all the time. Nothing happens, just happens for a reason. But I think good leaders give reason to why things happen. They shape experiences and they shape ways. They give it meaning behind it. So I lost out in a World Cup by not being able to play on that World Cup. But what I gained in perspective and what I gained in my ability to carry through for myself as a leader was far greater than I would have learned if I stood on that field and had the opportunity to play. So I look at it like I am grateful for the experience, but that is a choice I had to make. I could have been negative. I've seen it the other way. I've seen players tear their ACLs and be so negative and, be total energy vampires and suck the life out of things because everyone has to walk on eggshells around them and worry about them. And again, I think that's just such a powerful way as a leader. Your choices have implications and impacts on others. And so if you can think outside yourself and you make choices with that in mind, you can choose to be positive in a situation and shape it that way, or you can choose to be negative in a situation and shape it that way. But understanding the power and the choice is yours. And you're going to have that in very small, everyday, daily kind of things that you do. And you're going to have really big, meaningful things that like are heavy and really expose and show that. So I think choice is just so powerful, and recognizing the choice is a privilege. And for you as a leader, the importance of the choices that you make and the discernment that you have behind those things. Connection. And this one is just so incredibly important to me. Connection for me, I don't think leadership exists without it, because I don't think leadership exists and can exist. And this is my own personal take on this. I don't think it can exist in a vacuum. I think in order for there to be a leader, there needs to be a follower, and in order to follow, you need to have a leader. So I think they all work together, and they're this beautiful synergy between it. And I think the idea of connection is something that is just so powerful. And I look at connection as connection to like a vision, connection to a mission, connection to a purpose, as well as human connection between people. And if you think about, I think about those like dots to dots. Did you guys have them in America? I mean, I'm assuming you did. The dot to dot, all the little dots and all the little numbers around it. And you can look at it and it's just a mess of dots and numbers. A good leader helps you connect all those little dots and numbers. And at the end, there's this amazing picture that you didn't see when you started, right? So like, I feel like a great leader has the ability to reach and connect people, visions, and purposes. And I think about the best leader I can possibly think about, and the people that have really shaped and like left a really meaningful impact on me. It has been through that just compelling human kind of connection as well. I had my Australian coach, and probably if even prior to a week ago, you'd said to me, name some of your greatest leaders and greatest influences in your life in that way. I would have talked about my coach, Melly. And unfortunately, just a few days ago, she passed away unexpectedly. She was too young to go. But I think about her when I think about connection, because I think about connection and how she made me feel. She sent me a text. She used to send a lot of texts, but she sent me a text and she said, no one cares how much you know unless they know how much you care. And I feel like that has been the catalyst of how I want to be and who I want to be as a coach. I feel like I do have expertise and knowledge in terms of what goes on a lacrosse field, but that's not what's important to me. My players and them knowing that I've got their back, that I'd run through a brick wall for them, that they can trust me in that way. That's what I want to instill as a leader. So I want them to know sure, feel like I know stuff on the lacrosse field. I can teach you things on the lacrosse field. I can teach you how to shoot a goal. I can teach you how to play defense. I can teach you how to do these things. I can strategize. I can scout. But none of that's important to me if they don't know truly the connection between how much I care about them as people. And that's what I try to impart and get across on a daily basis. But I learned that. I learned that through people like Melly, who touched me in a way. And one of the big parts of that communication for me, of that connection for me, was her communication and the way in which she communicated. And I try to tell my players this all the time, but it's in how you say something, right? If you're passionate about something and you really believe in it, like Melly used to look me in the eye and she'd say, "You've got this, like you can do this." And I believe that because I felt it. And good leaders will make you feel. They'll always make you feel something. And you have the power to do that. And it comes in communication. It comes in just genuine, authentic connections with people. And Melly always used to say to us, like, if you leave a hotel, if you leave a whatever, like have that connection with people. You want to leave an impression. You want them to remember you. And the only way you do that is by making them feel a certain way. And we want to be in the business of making people feel good about themselves. Another good kind of, I think, this isn't really a sports one, but it's kind of tied in. But for me, about connection, and any of my players that are on this call will tell you, I talk and lead with it all the time. But when I was applying for an under 19 Australian job, we had like a psych test, like this grueling, like, 3-hour, it was an interview, it was then a psych test, it was all these bits and pieces. And I felt like, I'm smashing this thing out of the park. And then I get to a question and they say to me, "Do you drink coffee?" I'm like, "Yeah, I drink coffee. Like, am I not going to get a job because I have a caffeine addiction?" And they said, "Okay, you drink coffee. Do you go to a coffee shop?" I said, "Yeah, I go to the same coffee shop every morning. I've got my favorite place." And they're like, "Okay, what are the names of your baristas, the people that work at your coffee shop, and tell us about their life? Do they have families? What do they like to do outside of work?" And I'm like, oh boy, been going to the same coffee shop in Baltimore for the last, at the time, probably 6 years. And I couldn't answer that. And at first I was kind of like, what does this have to do with coaching under 19 Australian girls? And I understand it now, and it's so important to me. Understanding that connections with people and valuing connections with people, if you lead with that and your intention is with that, the difference that you make in your life, because ultimately, like, a really good leader is going to touch many different people in lots of different ways. And it could be me just getting a coffee and asking how my barista Will's doing today, right? I've since learned my lesson. But how can I go and coach under 19 Australian girls in one of their most formative parts of their life if I don't understand the value of connections, big and small? And I'm seeing them on a daily basis. And I learned that lesson. And I encourage our players in our first team meeting, when they come in the fall, I say, I want you to reach out and connect. You're going to see people on campus, right? Outside of lacrosse, this has nothing to do with that. I just think it has to do with being a good person, a good leader, and a good kind of person of your community, which I think ties into leadership. You're going to see people at Boulder every day. You're going to see people when you go to the Jenkins parking lot every day. You're going to see, facilities workers every day. And having meaningful connections with them can go such a long way, not just for them, but for you. And we run a faculty staff appreciation day, and the amount of people that come up that are invited that say how important that has been to them, that connection. Otherwise, they wouldn't have known, an Ellie Klugel as anything but a women's lacrosse player. Now they're starting to get to know her as a person. And that's that value of connection. And that's a value as a leader that I think is so powerful. And I think if you can really work to find ways to connect with people on a daily basis, it can really increase your ability to be a good leader and embolden people and empower them in that way as well. Action, you know, I've always been a doer. I think in sports like that makes sense, right? You can't sit in a locker room and say, I want to go out on the field and I want to do this and that, and then never step foot on the field. Like, I feel like as athletes or as coaches, like everything for me is about action and going out and doing it. But I think in general leadership, and I see it in all other parts of my life and leadership as well, being a leader of action and not just, you know, saying the words, but actually backing them up and doing something about it. And especially in this time that we're in right now, I think it's more than ever the time to step up. And, you know, with voting coming up and things like that, about having, you know, having action oriented, not just saying you care about something, not just saying something's important to you, but what actions are you having that demonstrate that. And I think the ability to lead with action is a really important thing. And I use a story. I learned this story when I was a kid, and I do think it has literally carried me through life in so many different examples, and most importantly through my leadership. And it's a story called Poo in Your Path. And you know, imagine there's, you know, you're on one side of a small little pedestrian bridge that is literally one person wide, and you go to walk up to the path, the bridge to get over it, and there's poo in the path. Like, quite, you can figuratively or meaningfully, what, you know, can be both. It can be all these things. It can be a metaphor for life, but there's poo in the path. You have three types of people. You have the ignorer. So you have the person that walks up, sees it, steps over it, keeps walking, doesn't say anything about it, doesn't do anything about it. You have the pointer. You have the person that walks up, steps over it, sees it, and then stands by the bridge and says, oh, watch out. Don't step on that poo. Be careful of that. The pointer that just points out the problem, sees it there, points it out. And then you have the doer. The person that walks up, sees the poo in the path, uncomfortably probably, puts a bag on, picks it up, puts it in the bin. Now, no one has to worry about the poo in the path ever again. You don't have to have your pointers or your ignorers. They're irrelevant because someone was a doer. And I think in so many areas of our life, as leaders, as a coach, as athletes, as players, as students, you know, as members of ODK, as members of just the student body, in your work, in your life, in all those things, there are opportunities and times to be a doer. And it's not going to be always the easiest thing. And it's not always going to be the most pleasant thing. It's going to be the most uncomfortable thing. But I think your engagement with it, your ability to take action, to not look at it, like, I think I always say, I think there's nothing worse than just pointing at something. Seeing it's there and pointing at it and talking a lot about it, but you not being willing to step up and have some meaningful action behind it. Like, I think about that, and I think about those people and those leaders, and I would struggle to follow them. And that for me is, in terms of leadership, would I follow that person? And if I wouldn't follow that person, I don't want to be that kind of leader. So again, you know, poo in your path, maybe not like a sports metaphor for me, or not a story I'm representing there, but it is something that literally, it is just one of those that stuck with me and has been with me since I was a kid. I heard it and in all kinds of little things. There's so many small examples of life where I see the poo and I go, this sucks, but I'm going to pick it up. And maybe no one even knows the good that did, and that I avoided all this other drama behind it, but I know. Right. And I just took action, and sometimes it's small action, and sometimes again, it can feel like big, powerful, overwhelming action. But the point of it is that you're a doer. You try to do something about it. And then kind of my last one before we kind of open up to some question and answers, and before I make your ears bleed with my horrendous Australian accent rocking right now. But is growth. And I think growth is so important. I am definitely not the leader that I was as a kid or as a teenager or in college as I am now as a coach. And we use this tagline, we use it all the time on the team, and the girls are probably sick of me saying it, but you grow through what you go through. And it's so important to me because I think we're ever evolving, we're ever changing. And so even when you get things really, really wrong, there's an opportunity to grow and turn it around and to get it right. And so there's no better example for us or for me as a coach than where, we lose a big game and we're in a locker room, and it's not, it can't be the end of the world. It can never be the end of everything. It's got to be that we grow from it, we learn from it, and we show up the next day with those lessons, and we're a little bit better because of it. And I think that kind of growth mindset, never wanting to be the same leader today as you are tomorrow, trying to learn through experiences and learn through other people's experiences. And just by nature of you getting on today and hearing other people's stories and listening to other people's takes and perspectives on things, hopefully helps you to grow. And if you take just one small little thing away from today and it helps to change you in some way, in a positive, meaningful way, and grow as a leader, then I feel more than happy that I was able to get on here and do my job. If that's one person, because one small person and one small growth can affect change in a great way. And so constantly evolving and constantly being on your toes, and you want to be in the moment, but then you want to be looking for what's next. And, I think really learning through those experiences. COVID has been, if nothing else, probably the biggest experience for me to grow in that way. Sitting in a room back in March this year and hearing the news to our team, who we're on a 5-0 streak. We're potentially having one of the best seasons that Loyola women's lacrosse has ever had. Everything was going together. Everything was running smoothly. We were in such a good place. There was such a good vibe on the team. We were so successful. We were accomplishing all our goals. We were all these things. And in one conversation, COVID ripped that all out from under us. And I think we were all given, as players, as coaches, as people, a real opportunity to step back and to see, sports are so much more. They teach you so much more, but that gave me a greater perspective on things than I could probably have ever learned in any other way. There's so many other more important things. And I tell our players all the time, you don't define yourself by being a women's lacrosse player. You're more than that. I'll tell you, don't define yourself by just being a student or just being a, whatever it is. Don't close yourself into that one circle. Continue to grow and evolve and be more than that. And I think being a good leader is being aware of that, having that self-awareness as well, but then being willing to grow and evolve beyond that in what you do. I think growth also is about, I touched on it before, but, learning a lot of the time from what you get wrong. I'll be the first, and I've learned this over my years. It used to be like, I'm not drawing attention to the fact that I just screwed up. I'm not going to stand in front of the team and tell them that, whoops, I missed that scout. I didn't realize that kid was going to be such a good, but over time, I think building trust through that growth and growth for myself and being able to outwardly expose that and say, I messed that up. I take that on. I didn't do this or that, but I've grown from that. And this is how. I hope they're lessons that I teach our team. And I continue to tell them all the time is, if you can learn from my mistake by me verbalizing it, by me owning it, by me showing you how I'm going to grow from it, if now you can avoid it or you can be better because of it, then we're through shared growth and shared learning. And we don't have to make that mistakes 35 times. We can make it once and share it amongst ourselves and be better because of it. And I just think growing, but being open to that growth is just so important in the idea of leadership, and wanting to be exposed to so many different things and so many different people and so many different experiences. And you're not always going to take from it. You're not always going to learn from it. You're not always going to want to bring that into your own way that you lead. but valuing and learning the other people's perspectives and other perspectives that are out there, I think is a really, really awesome leadership trait to kind of add into your toolbox of leadership. So again, I could sit on here and I could bore you to death with every characteristic and value in leadership. It is like a wormhole, like a rabbit hole that is too deep and crazy to go down. And I constantly am sitting here and I'm always like, it feels so overwhelming to me, leadership. But when I narrow it down to like what is important to me, and that's all important, that is all that is important. If leadership is important to you, and it obviously is to everyone on this call, then that's a start. And then from there, owning who you are and how you lead, owning your triumphs, owning your mistakes, being willing to learn from those and grow from those. And I think we have such a powerful group of leaders at Loyola. I've been just so impressed with every interaction I've had with obviously not just our student athletes, but in the regular student body, because I think there is an awareness about leadership and the value and the contribution it has, and you continue to shape each other. And I think it's a really powerful, awesome thing. So that's kind of it for me. I'm definitely open to any questions or anything that you all have. And again, I know there was a lot of stuff and stories and whatever. And I just hope there's a little, at least some nugget that you can take away that might help you to become a better leader as well.
Okay. Ellie's going to open it up for a question and answer section. So if anyone has questions, you can turn your microphone off and just state them, or you can put them in the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with.
I have a question. So it's always been so I'm a swimmer. I did try out I was on rowing for the first year of college, which was quite the experience and very different. And it's always been intimidating just to be like, I think especially for coaches to be in like sports, because it's always known to be this like man-based field. And anytime that there's a female coach, it's kind of like, oh, like that's impressive. Have you ever faced criticism just because you weren't a female in just a sport, and how did you handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, absolutely. I think there is this, and we saw it when you ask Siri to define leadership. There's a picture of a man in a suit behind a podium. Like, there's been so many brilliant female leaders, and why is that the choice for that, picture? And it is a choice. So someone made that choice to put that there. And I see it in sports all the time. I think there's such a powerful movement at the moment. I think we're making really great incremental changes in so many different areas of life in different ways. But certainly as a coach, I know for me, I sit in a room and I've heard before, like, oh, to be a successful female coach, like, you've got to be a bitch. Like, you've got to be, overly assertive. You can't be, compassionate. You can't have empathy. You can't be these things. And yet there are things that I think make me the most powerful version of a coach that I can be. And so I think that there is this misconception about what it looks like. There's this misconception about confidence and where you've had to get to and why you've had to, how you've had to get to that point. And in terms of really owning that, I think I keep going back to, like, I want it to be different. I want it to be different for other female coaches, other female athletes. I want it to be different for generations to come, where they don't think about it. They don't have to think about, the picture of the man in the podium with the suit. They don't think about a man sitting on a horse holding a sword, or, the president and it being a man. Like, they don't have to think about that. So gender, I mean, I think it is something that we're at battles with, but it's getting better. And I think it's getting better because people are like, there are so many great women out there. Let's showcase and expose what they're doing. Let's showcase these phenomenal women coaches. And I will say, one of the things that has always fascinated me is how many men coach women's sports, but how few women coach men's sports. And it's actually interesting because you're starting to see it more, but it's such a big deal. But how many times are men hired to a women's staff and they're on ESPN, or they're, being showcased or splattered all over the news? So the fact that it's a novelty still, for me is a problem, but I look at that like that's my fight. And that's why I want to continue to lead and to show that that's not what it's about. Being a good leader doesn't have a gender assigned to it. Being a good coach doesn't have a gender assigned to it. Doesn't have labels associated with it. And again, it's personal. I don't think it's positional or title based. So great question. And again, I could go on forever, but I'll spare you all. Preach.
Hey, Jen, I have a question. Hi, everyone. I'm Liz Scott. I'm a senior on the Loyola women's lacrosse team. Jen, my question for you was, what do you think, the biggest part of leadership is? What would you say the biggest leaders should always have this, and why?
Liz, you always come with the hard hitters. I think it's so loaded because I do think it's, I guess what I would say is the leadership thing I would think everyone needs to have is the knowledge of the power of leadership. It's not a thing. It's just the knowledge and awareness that leadership is so powerful, so that you can find and use ways. I mean, listen to stories and perspective, but just understanding and knowing that leadership's a thing, but that leadership is a powerful thing. Kind of a cop out, I know, but I don't think I can give you a value or characteristic, because I think I don't even know that. I can't look inside myself and say leadership is one thing. Leadership is everything. Leadership is in everything, everyone, everywhere, and it's seeking it out.
I have to wonder, have you ever doubted your own leadership skills, and not necessarily the ability, the way in which you apply it, but when you reach self-doubt, when you reach, maybe because of failure, maybe because of loss of interest, maybe because of something, what do you do to remind yourself of who you are?
That's a great question. And you're certainly going to be met with self-doubt a lot. I am as a coach, and I will tell you, I've been met with it most recently, in a very, I think, internal way. I've very much been feeling it, as I'm sure with all of you, with so much uncertainty and so much change and so much being different right now. Like I said, I value connection as something for me. And I've been trying in this time, while I don't have my players there and physically there, to connect. And I get off these Zoom calls, I just feel bad. I'm like, I'm not doing this right. I feel like I'm getting it wrong. Because I just it doesn't feel like it normally does when I'm speaking to my team or having an opportunity to have those moments with them on a field, or, and so I had a big amount of self-doubt in am I doing my job right now as effectively as I can? And to answer your question, I go back to, I think leadership is easy and very powerful when you're in person, when you're present. But I think the most incredible leaders lead in their absence. And I have found myself defaulting back to that with my team. They know authentically who I am and what I'm trying to do and my intentions behind things, that I can get it wrong right now. And I can doubt myself and be like, this is new to me, so I need to navigate it. And I'm probably not going to be perfect in it. And I have already screwed up, they'll tell you. I trying to figure out quarantining and coming back and working in small pods. It's been ugly and messy, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm growing and learning as a leader and how to shape and do it. And I've got it wrong. We got it wrong in the beginning, but looking at it and saying at the end of the day, like, I know my players trust me, and trusting myself with that is how I've come out of it. Is like, I know that's the right thing. I know at the end of the day, I can get it wrong 100 times, but they trust that I'll figure out how to get it right the one time when it's going to mean the most. So that's kind of, I think, being very confident in that in myself has been a default for me to fall back on when I doubt myself very heavily in certain situations and getting them wrong and trying to fix it and get it right the ship.
Jen, I have a question too. I'm wondering how you can lead by empowering other people, and your experience with being a leader on on such a high level, while empowering your players to lead themselves, and while empowering your players to learn and grow on their own too.
Yeah.
I would love to hear that, your experience with that.
Yeah, I love that. I look at it like, first, empower yourself. Understand what it is you want to deliver, like what message, what is important, what is the value, what is the what is the drive, what is the direction, what is the passion, like what is that? And I think empowering yourself, and then it ripples out, right, to that next group of people. And for me, that might be, for me, empowering myself, and then empowering my staff, my coaches who work with me on a daily basis to be their best versions of themselves. And for me, a lot of the time that might look like, in a situation, understanding my strengths and saying, I need to step back. I need to shine the light on you right now and give you an opportunity to step into the limelight and lead. We're moving in the same direction, but it's maybe it's giving the reins to someone else and trusting them, because we've got this shared vision and purpose. And then I feel like it ripples out. And kind of like with that, I do think your most powerful ripple is from within, right? You can empower yourself and be like, this is what I'm all about. And then it ripples out into that next group of people who are so closely identified to your cause and what you're doing. And for me, that might be, my direct coaches. And then the next line of that for me might be my captains or people that I look to in certain other examples. And then it comes out to the team. So for me, as the ripple goes out, it might get less and less powerful. But then as each of those new kind of ripples takes on empowering the next one, it keeps momentum. And so I think that it is about empowering others, because you can't do it alone. My strength of my conviction, and no matter how compelled I am as a leader alone, I can't achieve, I'm never going to achieve what I want to achieve. But as I continue to empower more people to lead and to share that same vision, and they then empower the next group of people to lead and share that same vision, you're all kind of moving in the same direction. That has momentum. And I think empowering people creates momentum, and the more momentum you can create by empowering people, I think, is where leadership is at. You trace it back to maybe to the one person, but it's shared amongst so many different people. Did that kind of answer your question? I mean, I feel like in games, we have sometimes I'm like, I don't have the answer, and I'll say to one of my assistants, like, what should we do? And, that's not me necessarily stepping away from leadership, and that's not me not doing my job as a coach, and instead it's saying, I don't have the answer. I don't feel like I'm capable of that right now, but you might. And if you do, like, I want to empower you to feel like you can do that. We all know we want the same end result. In a game, it's to try to win. So they're stepping up into that role, and they're then trying to take that on and empowering them to do that, is again about those connections, but also about you being a good leader. You can help shape and make good leaders who can then shape and make good leaders. And now your reach is far greater than what it was as one individual.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense.
My question for you is, what is the biggest risk that you've taken, and how did you grow from taking that risk?
Yeah, wow. Well, I'd say my biggest risk was coming over to America to go to college. Obviously terrifying. I'm a 18-year-old kid who I didn't know how to use the washing machine. My mom had cooked all my meals, didn't know how to cook anything. I got on a plane and, travel over 24 hours to get over here and kind of take it on myself. So I'd say it was the biggest risk I took. And I guess also the biggest example in my life of risk reward. I came over here with the intention of going to college to play lacrosse, to get an education, to have the opportunity to play the sport I love at the highest level at the time. Out of that grew and birthed this opportunity to give back that experience that I just had. And I never intended to be a coach. I had all these other great plans, best laid plans in life. And the day I graduated, I was like, I can't see myself doing anything else. Like, I want other people to get out of their college experience as a student athlete what I had the opportunity to get out of it. And I felt like it was kind of my duty, but it was also felt like it was my calling, right? Like I felt like I could really connect to that and those ideas of what makes a good coach maybe, or what makes a good as a profession. I felt like that fits me, and it's my place to shine. I don't know what I'd do now. So I guess my biggest risk was coming over, and then again, my biggest reward comes out of that risk as well.
We could
Hi.
have one
Oh.
last question. Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay,
No, you're good.
this is Julia Gray from women's soccer. I just wanted to ask how you find a balance in your natural leadership skills when you're put into a competitive environment like the professional international level that you competed at, going to World Cups. I'm sure there were a lot of dominant personalities. So how do you either, kind of just stay true to yourself or find a happy medium with your teammates?
Yeah, that's awesome question, Julia. I think, I could have talked about balance, and I think every single one of these words, balance is so important to me. And I think it's taken me my lifetime up to now to figure it out. And I'm not saying I have it exactly right, and I'm sure it's going to be fine tuning as I go, but I have always been an insanely competitive person. So, I get out on a field and I want to win. I'm involved in sports because their results and success is tied to that, and that whole kind of side to it. But there's this other side to the beast of sports that is, building relationships with people and having fun and enjoying it and using it as an outlet, all of those things. And I kind of look at it like it's a scale, and everyone has their own scale, and you got to find where it tips that you're at your perfect balance. And so for me, it's taken me a long time, but even at the competitive level, you go from, you're just the best at something, you get onto this team and you're just average, you're just the same as everyone. And I think understanding that there is always a place to lead. There is always a place to step up. There is always a place, I don't think even on those teams, like no one's going to be upset by you being authentically you. That's what people want. That's what people strive for. That's what people search for in people, is to understand who you are. And if you're authentically you and you use those opportunities and you actually use that platform in a really positive way to expose those sides of your leadership, and balance it out to where you're not crazy and psychotic in one certain way, I think that's the key. And that's the key to being a great athlete. I think it's a great key to being a great leader. It's the key to being, I think, a great person, is finding a balance in everything that is like your chemical makeup, that is only right for you, not for any other single person. And so that's comes from and is shaped from your values, other people that you're around, and all the external kind of environment as well. But I think balance, if you strive to achieve it, can be something that really can dictate for you being a good leader. Because you can be insanely competitive and cutthroat, but also have a lot of fun beating up on Florida and beating them by 10. That can be fun as well as being the means to an end, right?
Thank
Since those were all awesome questions, if someone has one last question that they've been dying to ask, I'll let you ask. No? Okay. Well, thank you, Jen. That was absolutely amazing. I know I got a lot out of it. I hope that everyone else did in this call, especially in terms of leadership. You know, everyone in here either is extremely interested in leadership, has a leadership position. Something I hope that you sort of all took out of it is something that you can take back into, you know, anything you do here on campus. But 2 quick announcements. In the chat, the first thing I'm going to send you right now is a Qualtrics survey that I would like for you all to fill out. It's sort of just an assessment about this leadership cafe to help us inform for later leadership cafes. And then something I think that Coach Adams talked about was, you know, taking action as a leader. And one of those things that you can take action with right now, if you haven't heard, there's something called the Milestone Fair that is happening until tomorrow at 5 p.m. So basically what it is you have, you know, those key milestones in whatever academic year you are, whether you're a first year, sophomore, junior, senior, and it's sort of a time and a space for you to reflect on those key milestones. So part of being a leader, realizing what those milestones are, how you can sort of shape them, how you can direct yourself in your future time here at Loyola and beyond. So what I'm going to also do is put the link to the Milestone Fair. And just so you know, you can win prizes. So you have to submit videos. But if you submit like an awesome video, you can win, I'm going to totally call it the wrong thing. It's like the AirPod Deluxe or Pro. What's like the latest version?
AirPods Pro.
Yes, you can win AirPod Pros if you give like an awesome answer to one of these booths. So the second link, oh, they sort of attach, but the second link is the Milestone Fair. So I suggest you all go look at that, look at your class year track, look at the booths that are there, try and get something out of it. Maybe even bring something in that you learned in this leadership cafe to tie into one of your videos. But any questions about those 2 things? No? Any last parting words, Coach Adams, before we sign off?
I just say thank you for all of your time and to Lead On Hounds. You guys are awesome. And just by very virtue of being here and being part of the Hound community, you know, it's a special group of people. And I think we can do powerful things here and continue to lead the nation, lead in whatever way, big, small, whatever shape you can find to lead. I just encourage you to go about it and lead and find your way.
Awesome.
Well,
Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you all.
And thank you everyone else for coming out.
Thank you.
Everyone unmute and give a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So much.
Thank you.
Oh, and you heard me and you're in. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Just question real quick. For like ODK, so how do you take like attendance? Is it at the end, you said?
Yep, so we took a screenshot of everyone here and we're gonna put your point in for you.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thanks again, you guys. Appreciate it.
Great
Of course,
event.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.